Hello and welcome to this week's Street Soccer United podcast with me, Keith Mabbott, the founder and CEO of the Street Soccer Foundation. On today's show, I'm delighted to welcome Caroline McRoyall, a consultant and ex-CEO of the Surrey Football Association. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today. So to kick things off, for the benefit, as always, of our listeners, the partners and supporters, and also the young people that we help through the foundation, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi Keith, thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. My name's Caroline McRoyall and I'm a consultant working with sports clubs and organisations to help them achieve their goals. And that could be around sports development, it could be around helping them with funding or facility development, or even just helping them with their structures, their organisation and their governance. I've worked within the sport and leisure industry for over 20 years. I'm also a volunteer trustee for the London Football Trust, who look after the strategic management of grassroots football hubs across London. And I'm just coming up to a year as being chair of Tooting and Mitcham United Football Club.
So leading on from that, there seems to be quite a lot of football about who you are and what you're involved in. And I know that you spent a good 11, 12 years at the Surrey FA up until recently. How did you actually get into football in the first place?
So I first got involved in football. I was on holiday with my best mate and we started watching the Italia 90 World Cup. And as the tournament progressed, we got more and more engaged and interested in the game and the players. I became a big fan of Gary Lineker and ended up being a Spurs fan. And at the end of the tournament, my friend decided that was it, we had to play football. So we looked around for a local team, found one and started training. But it wasn't until we actually started playing, for me, myself, that I really got a bug for the game, and that was it. I couldn't get enough. My friend actually dropped out of football in the end, which was quite ironic because she was the one who sort of pushed us into it. After sort of playing the game, really enjoyed it, wanted to get more involved. So I also then started volunteering with the club and actually became their marketing officer, doing the local match reports for the paper, and actually was instrumental in getting them their first sponsorship deal with Holiday Inn, which was a really proud moment for me. I decided that that was it. I wanted a career in football. I continued volunteering. I helped out on the league and then the county FA actually as a volunteer to start off with. I was lucky enough to go to university and I did a degree in sports studies and social biology. And when I came out of uni, my first job was as a leisure assistant at a local leisure centre. Lucky enough for me, they were very good at personal development and supporting people. They put me through my lifeguard qualification and my swimming teaching certificate. And at the same time, I was also doing my coaching badges for football. And within 6 months, I was promoted to duty manager. And it was from there that my career, I suppose, in sport really pushed on, because I then became a leisure development officer for the London Borough of Merton and then followed that up by becoming a football development officer at the London FA.
Italia 90, Caroline, my goodness me, now you're getting me. I mean, that's obviously shown our age for the younger people that are listening. But my God, that was the tournament for me as well. Absolutely. I remember it so well. I won't go into finer detail because it'd be far too embarrassing. But let's just say I wore sort of from head to toe England gear and was firmly engaged emotionally with the tournament from start to finish. But there you go. Great that you got playing though. And started volunteering at the club, which is a really interesting point that you make, volunteering to help create opportunities for yourself. And you touched on how you developed on in your career in sport. Do you think as you've developed in this area, and in particular in football, you've had to face a bit of an uphill challenge, and in this, what sort of challenges specifically have you faced throughout your life and how have you dealt with them?
So the challenges within the game, obviously football is a male dominated environment, and being a female within the game always used to raise a little bit of an eyebrow. And when I used to say to people what role I played in football, the immediate response was, what, women's football? And it was like, well, no, I work in male and female football. Obviously that was in the very early days. There are more females involved in football now and people are a lot more open to that. But I also had a lot of support throughout my career as well, which was really good. I had a few comments that weren't necessarily appropriate at the time as well, which I had to challenge, which was difficult, but I took the opportunity to sit down with the individual and actually explain how those comments made me feel and give him his dues. I think he respected that I took that approach, and obviously it changed his behaviour. So there is opportunities to change behaviour by challenging forms of discrimination. The other challenges that I kind of faced was moving the organisation from a very traditional volunteer structure into a more organised business environment. So the big thing that we did was look to open up the representation of the County FA to make it easier for people to become a county member and give their views. So we were more representative of the organisation. So that took quite a while in terms of changing that process.
One thing you mentioned there in terms of changing behaviours, being kind of by challenging existing mindsets and beliefs, this I entirely get and understand. It really does echo the kind of work that we do, Caroline, through the foundations. I know you know now, knowing that if if individuals can change their mindset, rethink their own belief system, this in turn genuinely causes differing outcomes and actions. So fantastic, really, really interesting. And what about kind of other challenges that you may have faced outside of work?
So other challenges that I've kind of faced have been sort of outside of work, and that's in my sort of personal life with my family. So my husband kind of had a mental health breakdown about 3 years ago. And I kind of say a mental health breakdown. I think he'd been struggling for a while, but we just hadn't really kind of recognised it, and he hadn't recognised it. But at that time, he kind of got to a point where he wasn't sleeping. He was struggling with work. He was becoming very ill, and he actually sort of kind of recognises he needed support and went to see a doctor. And took some time out of work, and it was quite a difficult time for me personally to obviously try to support him as much as possible, but not fully understanding what he was going through. And then on top of that, sort of about 4 or 5 months later, I found out that my mum got diagnosed with breast cancer. She lived in France at the time, and came home to stay with us to go through her treatment. So I was then supporting her through her treatment and chemotherapy, and supporting my husband at the same time with his mental health. And interestingly, at the same time, I was still a CEO at Surrey FA, an incredibly busy time. We were moving offices and had all the issues that we were having around the delays and the construction of Meadowbank. And I'd told a few people about my mum having cancer, but I hadn't told anyone about my husband and his mental health issues. And it wasn't until Mental Health Awareness Week, actually, that our Inclusion and Disability Officer at Surrey FA asked me to lead a discussion on mental health awareness. And she didn't know obviously what was going on, but asked me just to open up the conversation. And I took the opportunity to actually tell the entire staff team of everything that was going on and what had happened. And it was an incredibly emotional time, and you can hear from my voice that I'm still emotional now, but there were tears, and I think some of the staff were teared up as well. And it was great for me to get that off my chest, and I did feel like a weight had lifted off my shoulders. And I think it helped them to understand that maybe they'd seen me as this organised, efficient, with no problems, and they just didn't know what was going on in the background. And I think that just is such a lesson to be learned from everyone. You just don't know what people are going through, but it's so important to tell people and just to talk about it, because it so helped with me. And I think it was about that time, as I was opening up, that I suddenly realised that supporting my husband and my mum had actually had an effect on me and my mental health as well. So, I suppose the message I want to get across is, if you are struggling, please share, because you just don't know who else is going through the same thing. And just by talking about it really, really helps.
Oh, Caroline, what a time that must have been for you. But focusing on your clear message there, absolutely. Talking about mental health issues, Whether it's for yourself, or someone close to you, out loud with other people really does help. You're absolutely right. It's so important. One, it makes it more acceptable within communities, doesn't it? And it obviously helps in other ways, ways to cope, how to get through it and get on that road to recovery. Essentially, it helps make sense of our feelings, and collectively we can then all kind of help each other cope, improve, and become more positive. So it's really, really important advice. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. But what about over the last few months in that regard then, talking about mental health? I mean, how have you coped with this lockdown? What have you been doing?
So lockdown's been quite a weird time for me and my family. So work has obviously been quiet, and what I have been doing, I've been doing from home. My mum is back with us and is shielding, so obviously been trying to protect her and keep her safe because she's still obviously ongoing with her cancer treatment. My husband and my eldest son work for an ambulance station, so they're responsible for making sure that ambulances are prepped, all the equipment is checked, they're cleaned, and they're ready to go out for the paramedics. So, as you can imagine, they've been incredibly busy. So I kind of been making sure that they have everything they want, all the cooking, the cleaning, and all that, so they don't have to worry about anything else. But I suppose a big thing for me, obviously, when the pandemic hit, was I wanted to feel useful. I wanted to be able to support the process. I didn't want to just be sitting at home. So I volunteered quite early on for the local authority to help deliver food parcels. So I've been doing that. It's only been one day a week, a couple of hours, but I've delivered sort of over 35 food parcels to other people that are shielding across the borough. And that's been incredibly rewarding, and everybody's been really grateful for the donations that they've been receiving. In terms of the business, I've been trying to use the time to be productive. The clients that I'm working with are continuing their projects, but obviously it's a little bit slower paced. But I've also been doing some personal development, so brushing up on my marketing skills and understanding social media. And I've also used the time to network. So I've been making new contacts, so such as Koi Sports, and who then put me in touch with yourself, Keith. So it's a good opportunity, and hopefully it means that once we're out of lockdown and we move forward, that the business can really take off and develop.
Brilliant. And yes, absolutely. I mean, you're mentioning there of Koi Sports, Dave, the MD there, give them a shout out. Dave, himself does a fantastic job, doesn't he, of bringing people together, like your kind self and I. They're a wonderful partner and support of ours. And Dave, you do a brilliant job. And you're right for the fact that if you're running your own business, it's so important to keep yourself out there, as it were, and network and have these conversations with people and businesses and show them that you're here and that you can help them. Now, in terms of more younger people, as you know, through the foundation, we support young adults, typically aged around sort of 18 to 25 mark on our academy program. And then we also, through our schools program, help those that are typically sort of 9 to 13. What advice would you have for young people at this moment in time who, are trying to achieve for themselves? It's a very difficult time, isn't it? But, they want to make a success of things. They want to perhaps turn their lives around for the better. What sort of advice would you have for them?
I would say to those young people that if they've got a passion for something, is to really try to progress that and see if that's something that they can develop. Obviously, I identified my passion early on as wanting to work in football, and then I volunteered. So, whatever area they're interested in, take some opportunities to volunteer to get some experience, because not only does that help with actual practical experience, it also helps with contacts and networks. But to also understand that, there's going to be times along the way where things don't go to plan. You don't get the job that you want, or you know something doesn't quite work out, but use that as an opportunity to learn and develop, and even make yourself more determined to succeed. So the first ever football development role that came out that I went for, I didn't get. I mean, I thought I was going to be a shoe-in for it because I was already volunteering for the organisation, and kind of knew a lot of the people that was involved in the role. But there was somebody out there that was better than me. But that did make me more determined to succeed and actually try to get some feedback and understand where I'd gone wrong and what else I could do to move forward. So just take the opportunities that are there for you. If you're offered mentoring support, take it. It's a great opportunity to learn from somebody else as well.
I love that, Caroline. Thank you. Enjoy your job. I mean, it's short and punchy advice, but so effective. You know, if you can work in an area that you're passionate about, it's like that saying, isn't it? As well, you know, you'll never actually work a day in your life. You know, really effective advice. You know, so it's a challenge to everyone out there. You know, if you can work in an area you're passionate about and you achieve on that, you're never actually going to work a day in your life. Fantastic. There you go. I hope everyone has listened to this interview. You've listened here to the brilliant Caroline McRoyall, now a professional consultant and previously a CEO at the Surrey Football Association. Fantastic experience. Do look Caroline up and get in touch with her if you'd like to talk about, you know, your organisation, whether it's in grassroots, football or sport in general. She's a wonderful professional and a great friend of the foundation now as well. And I'm sure we'll be doing some great things with you going forward, Caroline. Be sure to tune in again next week, guys, for our next podcast interview. Right.